Welcome to Love and Hustle. We share unfiltered stories of marriage, entrepreneurship, and scaling to seven figures without losing sight of what matters most.
The raw, the real, the sacrifices, and the lessons learned the hard way.
This is Love and Hustle. Welcome back to Love and Hustle. I'm Brittany.
And I'm Zach.
And this is the podcast where companies, couples, and chaos collide.
Let's dive all the way in.
Today's episode, we are diving in on all things ADHD. We're going to be talking a little bit about how I was diagnosed, which is quite the story. And Zach, as a pharmacist, is going to be bringing an interesting perspective. And I think a lot of creatives have ADHD and don't even realize that they have ADHD. So I want to talk a lot about the superpowers of ADHD.
I mean,
and
ADHD is way more common now than it's ever been, and that's like a societal thing. And the culture around ADHD has really changed a lot. Medication and therapies haven't changed that much, but I think society and how the acceptance of ADHD has gone through a complete polarization. Whereas when Brittany was diagnosed years and years ago, it was seen as a disability, and now we look at it more as a superpower that can be focused and have really outstanding results.
So let's first talk about my diagnosis, because I think it would be really helpful for people to have a little bit of a backstory.
For sure, yeah.
I mentioned in the first, if you listen to our intro episode, I talked a lot about how I really struggled growing up. Things didn't come naturally to me. I really had to work hard to pass. There was a saying that I had in nursing school, C is for complete.
Yeah.
And that was like getting an A was not even something that I honestly strived for. I strived for just passing because that's how hard everything was for me. I took the SAT like 6 times just to be able to qualify at the minimum to get in to what would be considered like
a community college,
B-list universities or like community colleges. Like going to top name universities, going to even be like Zach over here practically went to basically is now considered an Ivy League school. It's not, but it practically is. University of Florida, go Gators.
Go Gators.
But you know, like getting into UF, like I didn't even apply. Like girl knew she wasn't going to be getting in there. Getting into Florida State, not even. So at that point I was looking at like very I don't want to like, but downgrade it, but in the spectrum of like,
accepted or strived for higher educations.
Yeah, you know, if in the ranking of universities, I was not getting into any school that people recognize. I was not getting into any schools that actually compete on a football team that makes the television. Let's put it that way, okay? All the universities that I qualified for did not have athletics that made television, if that makes sense. And so, and that was just my reality. I struggled, and it wasn't because I wasn't smart, and it wasn't because I didn't try. It was just that my brain worked completely differently, and it worked differently in a time where there wasn't a lot of information, education. There was not a lot of normalcy around ADHD. And so growing up, I was told that I had a learning disability. I was told repeatedly what that learning disability, nobody knew. And, you know, I really, truly had to fight for every single grade that I had, and
develop a lot of characteristics like resiliency and determination and losing that fear of failure. All of these things that follow people with ADHD for their entire lives, they ultimately become like armor and make you almost undefeatable.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the superpowers of ADHD, is the resiliency that you build throughout your life by having all of these struggles. But so I knew that I had a learning disability of some kind. What that was, I didn't know. It followed me all the way into college. I did get some special testing privileges at one point. I could tell you, I could have a conversation with you and I could answer questions and I could explain things. And I would do this with my professors. But when it came to actually sitting down and taking the test, I couldn't actually get it right. And what I learned when I failed my NCLEX the first time, my nursing exam, is that I had to learn. I had to learn how to take the test.
Mm-hmm. You had to learn how to pass.
I had to learn how to pass. Yeah. I didn't have to learn. I didn't need to learn the content that this is like what is so messed up about some of these state exams, is that you don't actually have to learn the content that you're actually being tested on. You have to just learn how to pass the test. Which is
ironic because I think a lot of life is not necessarily learning the thing, but learning how to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shoot.
Get the results you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, just look at like the photography industry as a whole, right? Like how many meh photographers are out there crushing it? You don't have to be the best photographer to be successful.
Not at all.
If you know how to do marketing and sales, there you have it right there. So all that to say, I struggled, and it wasn't until 2021 I was approached by one of my coaching students. She was like, yeah, I was just diagnosed with ADHD. And I think that she had like missed her flight or something. And she was telling me about how like she didn't take her ADHD meds. It's probably why she missed her flight. Mm-hmm. And I stayed back to pick her up from the airport. And she's like, yeah, my daughter was diagnosed recently. And as I was taking, because my daughter can't read, she's like, as I was reading these questions and answering them for her, I was like, oh my God, this is me. Mm-hmm. And so then she went and she got tested and she was diagnosed, and she's like, Brittany, I've like kind of been under your wing as a student for the past year, and I like really think you have ADHD. And I was like, at the time I was breastfeeding Chloe, and I was just like, well, it doesn't matter anyways. Like, I'm not gonna be able to take these medications. They're not gonna like prescribe me while I'm, lactating, mm-hmm. all these things. Right. So I just kind of swept it under the rug. And then finally, I got tested, and it was before Lucas was born, and I remember answering all of those questions. They make you answer probably like a 40 question test,
like a 40 to 60 questionnaire.
And it's like, if you have ADHD, you'll be like, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh, that one's me too. Oh, look at that. Oh yeah, that's me too. And like, you'll know your diagnosis before you even get it from the person, if whether or not you got it. And then they actually do an anxiety test as well, which is really interesting because the little bit of anxiety that I have, I actually get anxiety from my ADHD that's not managed. And but I get on this Zoom call with this woman, and she's like, I've had a chance to review everything, but I'm still going to like talk through everything with you. So we talk for like an hour, and she's like, well, I'd like to let you know that you most definitely have ADHD. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, no shit. And cause at this point I in my mind, I had self-diagnosed myself. And so if you think you have this, like, please, I hope I inspire you to go get tested. It is hard to find people who will diagnose adults, but they exist. And she said to me, and I might like tear up saying this, but she was like, so she's a nurse practitioner. So she's been through nursing school. She's sat for the same exams that I've sat for. She's been through a lot of what I've been through. And she's like, the fact that you stand here, you made it through nursing school, you worked in an ICU for 6 years. And not only just like, you worked in a very niche ICU with babies. And then you grew a business, quit that other job, and stand here today. Even now, like, she's like, and now you're not just a business owner, you have a team, and like you are a coach. And she's like, the fact that you've been able to do this with how like, she was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 9.5 of ADHD. Like, that's how severe your ADHD is. And she's like, the fact that I'm sitting in front of somebody as successful as you have been is astonishing because you have struggled. She's like, I know from all the people I work with ADHD, you've had to fight to be where you are. And I was like, like I just like started bawling on this call because it was like 38 years of my existence was validated in like all my struggle and all of that, like fighting for every exam to like just pass and to like never know what was wrong with you for all those years. And then to be sitting here and having somebody not only be like, yeah, you got it, but shit, girl, look at where you're at. Was huge. You have little tears in your eyes.
Well, I'm just thinking about it from your perspective, empathizing with your struggles. But the other half to our kind of recent story with ADHD is our oldest son, Maverick, who just turned 10. He also was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and seeing him struggle is hard for a parent.
We get on a Zoom call with the woman who tested Maverick. And mind you, Zach was not there. It is a 5-hour exam for a first grader. And I just remember calling my sister whose child went through it. And I was like, did he have to do this? And I happen to have a client who also is a psychologist. And I call, and she's like, yeah, she's like, unfortunately, this is just how it is. She's like, you might be able to find people who will go around it, but chances are they don't take insurance. And I was just like, this is insane for a first grader to take a test for 5 hours. And just like, I sat in that waiting room and I actually, like, I brought my laptop and I was planning to work and I literally could not work. I was like anxious out of my skin sitting in that lobby. And so we get on the Zoom call with the same woman who did all the testing. And she's like, Maverick has ADHD. And so she pulls up the document. And she's like, I need to finish filling this out. But she's like, you know, these are the categories. This is what he tested. And he specifically tested in the reading comprehension, which is quite literally what I had been told my whole life where I struggled. And so we were like, okay, great. And she's like, here's some programs that you can put him in. You know, now that you have this, you're going to be able to really advocate for him in school. She's like, I'm going to get you all of the proper documentation. I have to finish filling all of this out, but you'll get all of this in writing, blah, blah, blah. So fast forward, we're sitting here actually in this room that we're in right now. And my parents came over and my parents, so that was like Friday that we had that meeting. My parents came over on Sunday and the previous Sunday, I think it was the previous Sunday to that call. And my parents were like, hey, here's some stuff we're going to sell the house soon. Here's some stuff from your bedroom when you were in high school. And there was a bag. And so it had been sitting here for about a week. We got that diagnosis on Friday. And now this is the following Sunday. And I peek inside that bag and I just start pulling some stuff out and there's a folder inside. And I open the folder and it has like a letter between my like second grade teacher and my mom, and they were going back and forth trying to like figure out how to support me. And there were some report cards and a couple of like other things. And then there was a sheet of paper from a psychologist. And I read the sheet of paper. I looked at the date. It was going into second grade, and I had been diagnosed with ADHD.
Literally the exact same form, except done on a typewriter 35 years ago.
Yep.
That we had just gotten from Maverick. And if you looked at the scores side by side, they were virtually identical.
So Maverick got diagnosed going into first grade. No.
Going into second.
Going into second, and I got diagnosed coming out of second. It was the exact same test because they actually have to cite like what version of the test they took. And like I took version 2 and he took version 5. And I just lost it. I lost it. Like I went in our room and I just like sobbed my eyes out because I was like, I think it was just this like outpouring of love of like the child that I was that now was Maverick, you know, like, and so I was a wreck like for weeks about this, like internally just knowing how much I struggled and that like this diagnosis sat there and nobody like And I know the culture was so different then.
Mm-hmm.
ADHD, it was kind of like, there was like, you were either normal or not.
Yeah. It was a stigmatism that would follow you for the rest of your life. At least that was the fear of parents back then.
So this is like, mind you, this is like the 90s. Okay. These are the early to mid 90s where like your child was either normal or was like not. And when you were not normal, you were classified with kids who were wheelchair bound, who didn't speak. Like there was no like spectrum of this category. It was black or white. And so I talked to my parents about it, and they told me point blank, they did not tell me because they wanted to protect me. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want to put me into this very black or white bubble that society that's how we were categorized.
Categorized as
not even society, just like it was just a matter of a fact.
Yeah, kids with learning disabilities was the broad.
Yeah, it was just this broad thing, and whether like somebody with ADHD was in the same category as somebody who had Down syndrome, as somebody who, couldn't speak. Like it was they were just all categorized together. And my parents didn't want that label to follow me, but it didn't change the fact that I was quite literally like crying for the little girl that I was, mm-hmm. because now it was like, here Maverick was with the exact same diagnosis. And I think if anything, it's like empowered me more to like advocate for him because I was him.
Mm-hmm. You know the potential struggles that lay ahead, but then you also, in a way, know that those struggles formed you into what you are. So we play around with that dynamic quite a bit.
And the thing that I learned, so everything in my life started to make a lot of sense after this. So I think this is where we can really probably start to talk about the superpowers of ADHD, because truly there are so many aspects of ADHD that if you leverage them in a positive way, you can be a flippin' force.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there's definitely superpowers, and I think if I could just jump in about some norms right now and some public misconceptions, because it is a superpower, but unfortunately, there is a huge portion of the medical community and just society at large that does not view adult ADHD as a legitimate thing. I know as a pharmacist, the vast majority of my colleagues really don't accept adult diagnosis as a legitimate diagnosis. It's just bizarre to me because I am not in that camp. I think that more adults have ADHD now than they ever have, and I think a lot of the data supports that because we've grown up in a very in an environment that's constantly throwing stimulus at you to the point where you cannot focus. And that's kind of the point. Everything's about attention. It's about stealing your attention. So in a world where attention is the commodity that all these companies are trying to monetize, it's very easy to have a failed attention problem. So attention deficit disorder for adults is prevalent. It is a legitimate thing. But it should not be viewed as a disability. It's kind of it definitely is a superpower. Does it oftentimes require medication? It does. And I would argue that medication in adults actually has a better outcome than it does for children. Children have to learn the social dynamic associated with their attention deficit disorder. They can't really speak to what actually is going on in their mind. So they kind of have to feel their way through it. And I think a lot of them just need more support and programs. And that medication in kids is probably often just overutilized. We've gone back and forth on whether or not to provide medication to Maverick, and we do at a very low dose.
Especially, and only when it's necessary.
Yeah, leading into exams and things like that. But we do, in a way, want him to struggle a little bit because in the struggle you form the necessary constructs to exceed expectations and to go beyond what would otherwise be considered a limitation.
Yeah, I think that you create through ADHD that, for me specifically, through ADHD that was undiagnosed, I developed coping mechanisms.
Yeah, framework of, yeah.
And so some of these coping mechanisms you can literally see. So I'll give the audience an example. I keep a calendar in paper, okay? And it wasn't until I was diagnosed that I really understood this paper. But there was a time that Zach really like kind of got onto me about how this paper binder was a barrier between me and my team, and how it was creating a problem. And was he accurate? Yeah, because if I had the paper binder and my assistant who does the scheduling doesn't have the paper binder, then how are we on the same page? So it did create some like that had difficulty in the aspect of a team. But what you don't realize is that is something I have done religiously for a decade. I have to write it. I have learned that part of me being able to remember something is to physically write it. Additionally, I have to color code things. And if you look through my planners, I have consistently used the same colors for the specific type of activity. And this has really allowed my brain to be able to remember things, to be able to just like have organization of how I am efficient as a person. And so I was like, when I learned, I remember that was like a really big argument, maybe like 5 years ago. And you got like, you were like, this binder is the reason why, like we have all these, but this, you're like, this
As
is
the operational person, I was really thrown by it. It was a point of friction.
Yeah.
And it really deterred timely communication. However, I now understand her need for it. It's just been a thing that I've had to operationally
work around,
accommodate,
yeah.
and get our team to accommodate it, which is the harder thing.
Yeah. And I think too, like, so what ended up happening was I found a girl on Instagram who was talking about ADHD, and she was talking about these journals that she keeps and how she would organize the journals in a very specific manner. She used color coding as well. And I sent that to you. And at that time, I remember I hadn't been diagnosed. But then when I was diagnosed, I was like, oh my God, this all makes sense now. Like it all makes sense. The other amazing thing about ADHD is your ability to hyper focus on things that you love. Mm-hmm. Like people with ADHD will start doing something and they'll forget that they need to eat. They'll forget that they need to go pick up their kids from school. They'll forget that they have an appointment. And it's not that they're necessary. Well, there is a forgetfulness aspect of it, but they get so incredibly hyper focused, where most people don't get so deep into that focus that they forget about other things, like quite literally eating, you know. Yeah. Normal people don't get, like, I should say, non-ADHD people do not get so hyper focused that they lose track of like all the other things that are happening. And I really feel like as I've moved through the business, and even if you look in more specifically the last 5 years since I've had a team, is I've taken the things that I don't really enjoy doing, that I don't want to hyper focus on, I've given it to other people, which has then allowed me to hyper focus even more on the things that I love. And we know that my strengths are marketing and sales.
Yeah. I mean, I'm reading that book right now.
Building.
I'm reading that book right now, 10X. I should know the author
10X
right now.
10X is easier than 2X.
Than 2X. And one of his
hold on. We need to like mention him because I think it would be, keep going.
So one of his biggest, I mean, the thing in the book that's most significant is to focus on the 20% versus the 80% of any given thing. And that one of the superpowers of people with ADHD is they'll look at that 100% of their life and they'll just completely push the 80% of the stuff that they don't like, don't want to do, doesn't interest them, and they will hyper focus on that 20%. And I think one of the main reasons why there's a disproportionate amount of success stories and entrepreneurial CEOs and executives that have ADHD is because they literally just push away the 80% with ease, without any sort of struggle or fear or whatever. And they just hyper-focus on the 20% that they're really interested in. And when you do that, when you take all of your energy and focus and you put it into a very small, specific area, you're going to get better. And you're going to get better than most other people who are concerned with being good across the board, which has been this guy. My biggest problem was I wanted to have A's in everything rather than having a singular A plus and something. And
I was like, I just want to pass.
right. But we've learned throughout the business and all of our growth that the more we can get you to focus on your zones of genius and we push off the other things and find someone whose zones of genius are that thing, getting the right person in the right area, the businesses explode exponentially. And
And so for me, like, I step back and I think about so I remember in nursing school, the only class that I got A's in was pediatrics and maternal fetal medicine. Those were the only sections that came so easy to me. And so I kind of naturally just realized that I have a real passion for that. And so my nursing career kind of spilled over into my photography niche. And my photography niche has almost even spilled over now, even specifically into the coaching niche of entrepreneurial women, more specifically women who are also mothers. And so there's this common thread that for me is just, I love. I really love. And by the way, the book that we were just 10X is easier than 2X is by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. So if anybody wants to go read that book. But yeah, exactly. Like I've just been able to hyper focus, and honestly, having a team has been able to leverage me more and more and more into those zones of genius and the things that I love. And I think so often as creatives, we really struggle with letting go. We really struggle with being able to trust somebody else to do those things. But when you actually have the deep, hard conversations with why you struggle with trust, but allow yourself to get deeper into that 20% of what you're passionate about, what happens on the other side is massive. And so
it's transformational.
Yes. So hyperfocus is a superpower. Resiliency of being like failure to me has just been like the way of living. Like it is just like, I failed my first NCLEX and I was like, well, not surprised by that. Like it wasn't even really like a blow to me at all, you know? And so I think a huge part of why entrepreneurs, more and even CEOs, there's such a high percentage of those people who do have ADHD. Do a quick search. What percentage of CEOs has? It's big. It's like, I think it's like over 60% of CEOs have ADHD. So, but all that to say, I think that a big part of that is the ability to, your perception of failure is not actually failure. It's just like, okay, well now we move on to the next plan. And so.
Yeah, so it says approximately 30% of entrepreneurs and 45% of C-suite members, so members of the corporate team, identify as neurodivergent, suggesting ADHD or some other form of
I feel like the percentage specifically for CEOs is even higher.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
And so all that to say, I think that the resiliency and the perception of failure is a huge driving force in how those people move into those leadership roles, is the fact that nothing is ever really truly failing. It's just a matter of learning. And it's just something that you become very comfortable with, and that you're like, okay, great, here we go.
And I think people with ADHD, they constantly are undergoing transformational change because they're building a tool set that allows them to get incrementally better. And I mean incrementally, so small little things that build upon each other. And then if you refocus every so often on a new 20%, like you've done this several times, and 10X is easier than 2X. He talks about like leveling up your life 10X each time. It just means that you get more narrowly more narrowly focused each time. And you take that superpower and you literally get microscopic with your effort.
Yes.
And you have outsized results. It's fascinating. Sometimes I look at the two of us and I watch you constantly leveling up, whereas I like got to a doctorate degree and stopped. Haven't done any really a whole lot of self-improvement. So it's been fascinating to watch you continually leveling up throughout your adulthood,
and I think
seeing the results of that.
That's something that's always kind of, made me scratch my head is like, I've asked myself, when will I be content?
Never.
Like, I think a lot of people, and I've had these conversations with like coaching students and they'll be like, well, I'm fine just like making it to this. And I'm like, okay. Like sometimes I struggle because I see so much potential in people. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but girl, do you know what we could do? Like if you like, and like, of course, if you're content, like 1000%, like you're like, that is your choice and you can be, but I've never existed in a space of being content. Like I always look at something and think that could be better. Mm-hmm. And I always look at something and say, okay, well, we did really good and I'm really proud of that, but like, how are we going to do it better?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between needing and wanting. And I think one of the fascinating things about ultra successful people is they stop worrying about needs and they have this wanting desire to be better. It's not so much an accumulation of things. It's like, why should I be content with where I am now when I know there's more potential? And one of the things that I see Brittany all the time, she'll be listening to something or watching something, or we're at a restaurant. She's like, oh my God, this place could be so much better if they just did this. And she wants to see improvement. She wants to see her students succeed. She wants to look in the mirror tomorrow and say, man, I'm better than I was yesterday. And she's just not content. And that is not a negative thing. If you are content with your life and you don't want forward progress and everything is good and you feel hunky-dory, great. That is great for you. I think there's a huge portion
sometimes
of the audience.
I won't lie. Sometimes I envy people who can like meet that place, because sometimes I'm like, God, I'm so tired. Like I'm so tired of always like evolving, but it's like a hunger inside me that like I have to like feed.
You would be so bored if you weren't constantly trying to evolve and be better. And I find that to be one of the most fascinating and inspirational things about you. Thanks, and people like you. But it's something that I personally want to be better at and set higher standards and goals for myself. I think when you do that and you succeed, even if you set a goal that's insane and you succeed by half, you're still infinitely better than you were before. So it's not a failure to set obscenely extravagant goals and not reach them, because you're still going to move forward. And
if you're watching on YouTube right now, I just love that Zach, when he talks, he has like his thumb up the whole time. And so the AI emojis just keep doing like a thumbs up.
See, I thought that was the audience saying they really liked what I was saying.
Nobody is listening to this live right now. It's pre-recorded. Look, see, there it is.
Look. Awesome. See, but that's feeding my ego, so that's good. I'm feeling good about that.
There you go. Well, we're just gonna let you keep thinking that people are listening live. It's like one of those shows from the '90s where they're like applause and they hold up the laugh.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're not watching on YouTube, just keep listening, because that didn't make any sense to you, but you got to be watching to see what was happening on the screen. So anyways, all that to say, I do think that there's a set of superpowers, and a lot of people, like I tell Maverick that we have really special brains. I think we have super brains. I know that one of our nannies has ADHD, and I really try to help Maverick realize that, when I was growing up, nobody had what I had. And I want him to realize that your brain being like, I almost want him to think of it as like, we are so special. I want him to almost think of this set of difficulties as not problematic, but as like a privilege to be able to have. And that we get to use our brains in ways that no one else can, but we just have to learn how to do that.
It's like a magnifying glass trying to focus light. When you get it just right, you create this extremely intense beam of light that's capable of burning everything in its path. You just have to figure out what that set is. And
I think for us, like, that's a big thing, is we're trying to figure out where Maverick's deep passions, where he can hyper focus, and how we can actually teach him, how we can create paths for him as an adult to allow those things to let him live a life he loves. And, you know, he's super passionate in art. He's really
very creative,
extremely creative. He has very good architectural spatial awareness. The other thing that we learned about him recently, and I learned this about ADHD, is people with ADHD, and this is like, again, like I have all these moments where I'm like, and I haven't done massive, like there's people who spend their life studying this, right? I'm not that person, but I will occasionally stumble upon things that I learn about this diagnosis, and I'm like, wow, that totally makes sense. So I recently learned that people with ADHD they're very intuitive when something is off. And it comes through pattern recognition. And so their brain is constantly seeing sequences, patterns. And so their brain can very easily identify when something falls out of pattern. Or and one of the things that I've been told by some of my mastermind sisters is that I have a very innate ability to begin forecasting before something is actually wrong. Like I start moving my chess pieces before any other person starts moving their chess pieces. And I think that it's that pattern recognition. And so recently we signed Maverick up for drum lessons, and his drum teacher is like, he was a music teacher in a high school, teaches drum lessons privately now. And he's like, he's good. Like what I've been able to teach him in 2 lessons, it can take me months to teach other people. And so now understanding this pattern recognition and how Maverick can mimic these patterns and repeat these patterns, and it's like all starting to make sense. And so, and you know, it's like, we're like, okay, we really want you to do drums because you're like, you're good at this, dude. Like this is like harnessing your superpowers right now, is like, how can we focus the light on something, you know, and give him also too, I want him to have that creative outlet. You know, I think growing up, people, you know, like dance is a huge expression for me and allowed me to, you know, manage my anxiety, and you know, it allowed me to feel a place of like creativity and expression. And so helping Maverick figure out like what are your superpowers, and how can we create not just a career for you or a path for you, but create all of these other forms of fulfillment for you. I was super good. Now I'm like sitting here thinking about it. I took tap, and I was really good at tap, because tap is all patterning. It's all sequencing. And so, you know, really, really understanding these things. And now like all the time, just even last month, just having these aha moments of like, this all makes sense. Everything in my life suddenly makes sense. So I think that this has been such a great episode. I'd love to record an episode 2 and share with the audience a little bit more about medications and your perspective from having been, you know, in the pharmacy space.
Yeah, I would just end this one on saying, if you are out there in the audience and you think that you might have ADHD, don't be afraid of the diagnosis, and don't be afraid of stigma associated with it. The vast majority of adults out there have some degree of attention deficit disorder, and it's a societal issue. And medicine for adults tends to be effective and does have some side effects, but ultimately it's good at focusing that attention and allowing you to be the best that you can possibly be. So in episode 2, we'll dive a little bit deeper into that and on some specifics, and I'll look forward to that one.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Have a great one.